Some losses never heal, they just teach us how to carry the weight. Vivian Ashmore had spent 3 years running from hers, building a billion-dollar empire to silence the grief she couldn't face. But on a foggy October morning, she finally returned to her sister's grave. The cemetery was quiet, just fallen leaves and morning mist, until she saw him. A man in his 50s sat beside the grave next to her sister's, his worn clothes telling a story of hardship, his trembling hands resting on a child's name carved in fresh stone. When their eyes met, something passed between them. What could a billionaire and a homeless father possibly share? More than she ever imagined. What he told her in that cemetery would break her heart wide open and change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The drive from Silicon Valley to Riverside had taken Vivian Ashmore 4 hours, though she'd made the journey only twice in 3 years. Once for the funeral, once for the 1-year anniversary she'd forced herself to attend. Both times she'd stayed less than an hour, standing at a distance, unable to approach the grave where her sister lay. Today marked 3 years since Iris had died. Vivienne had woken at 4 in the morning in her Palo Alto mansion, the kind of restless waking that comes when the mind refuses to quiet. She'd stood at her bedroom window, looking out over the city lights below, and made a decision. No more running. No more pretending the grief would fade if she just worked hard enough, closed enough deals, built enough wealth to prove her life had meaning. She was 48 years old, worth $3.2 billion, according to the latest Forbes estimate, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt truly happy. The cemetery sat on the outskirts of Riverside, a small town she'd left behind 30 years ago with a scholarship to Stanford and dreams too big for rural California. Iris had stayed. Iris had always stayed. While Vivian built her tech empire, developing software that revolutionized data security, Iris had taught elementary school, tended her garden, and lived a quiet life that Vivian had privately considered wasted. Now Iris was gone, and Vivian would give every dollar she'd ever made for one more afternoon with her sister. The morning fog was thick as she pulled through the cemetery gates. Oak trees lined the narrow roads, their branches heavy with autumn leaves. She remembered the layout from her previous visits. Iris's grave was near the back, under a massive oak that had been there longer than either of them had been alive. Vivienne parked and sat in her car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. She wore jeans and a cashmere sweater, deliberately casual, though even her casual clothes cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her assistant, Paulette, had offered to come with her. Vivienne had refused. Some things you had to face alone. She finally forced herself out of the car, breathing in the cool October air. The cemetery was silent, except for the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow. She followed the familiar path, her expensive boots crunching on gravel, until she reached the section where Iris rested. And that's when she saw him. A man sat on the ground beside the grave next to Iris's, his back against a headstone, his head bowed. He wore a jacket that had seen better years, jeans with worn knees, and work boots that were scuffed and splitting at the seams. His hair was grey at the temples, his hands rough and calloused where they rested on his knees. But it was his posture that stopped Vivian in her tracks. The complete stillness of someone carrying unbearable weight. The slight tremor in his shoulders that spoke of tears recently shed or barely held back. She knew that posture. She'd seen it in her mirror for months after Iris died. Vivian approached quietly, not wanting to disturb him, planning to simply visit Iris's grave and leave. But as she drew closer, she noticed the headstone he leaned against. It was new, the granite still sharp-edged and unmarked by weather. Anna Marie Tierney, beloved daughter, March 15, 2017, September 8, 2025. You were my whole world. A child. He'd lost a child, and recently, just weeks ago if the dates were right. Vivian's throat tightened. She stood frozen, unsure whether to acknowledge him or slip past to Iris's grave. But then the man looked up and their eyes met. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, but there was something in them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared pain. He didn't look away, and neither did she. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, two strangers connected by the universal language of grief. "I'm sorry," Vivian finally said, her voice soft. "I didn't mean to intrude." The man shook his head slightly. "You're not intruding. This is a cemetery. We're all here for the same reason." His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much lately, or like he'd used it too much for crying. Vivian gestured to Iris's grave, just one plot over. "My sister," the man nodded, understanding in his expression. "I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for yours." She paused, then added, "Your daughter?" "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Anna, she was 8 years old." Vivian felt the weight of that settle in her chest. She thought losing Iris at 45 was too young. "But 8? I should let you have your privacy," she said, but her feet didn't move. "You can stay if you want," the man said. "I don't mind the company. Silent company, anyway." Vivian found herself nodding. She walked to Iris's grave and knelt down, placing her hand on the cool grass. The headstone was simple, the way Iris would have wanted it. Iris Catherine Ashmore, teacher, sister, friend 1977, 2022. She made the world gentler. It had been Vivian's choice, that epitaph. Iris had always been the gentle one, the soft place to land in a hard world. While Vivian fought and clawed her way to the top, Iris had stayed kind. It was perhaps the greatest achievement of all, though Vivian hadn't understood that until it was too late. "Did you know Iris?" she asked quietly, not sure why she wanted to know, only that she did. The man was silent for so long, she thought he might not answer. Then, "No, but your sister knew mine." Vivian turned to look at him, confused. "What?" He met her gaze, and something shifted in his expression, a decision made. "They used to sit right here, together. Anna told me about her. The kind teacher who came to visit, who brought books and sat under the oak tree reading with her. I never knew her name until—" He gestured toward Iris's headstone. "Until I saw you here. You look like her. You have the same eyes." The world seemed to tilt slightly. "Iris came here? To see your daughter?" "Anna was sick for 2 years, he said, his voice steady but strained. "Leukemia. The treatments were brutal. The hospital was hard, but she loved it here, said it was peaceful. She'd asked me to bring her here between treatments, and we'd sit under this tree. One day, maybe a year ago, a woman was here visiting the grave next to ours. They started talking. After that, the woman, Iris, came back. Once a week, sometimes twice. She'd bring books, read to Anna, talk with her about everything and nothing." Vivian felt tears prickling her eyes. "I didn't know. She never told me. Anna said Iris told her it was their special place. That sometimes people need a place that's just theirs, where the rest of the world can't find them." That sounded exactly like something Iris would say. And it broke Vivian's heart that her sister had needed such a place, had found it here among the dead, rather than with the living, rather than with her own sister. "I'm Graham," the man said. "Graham Tierney. Vivian Ashmore." They sat in silence for a while, the fog slowly lifting as morning brightened. Vivienne found herself wanting to know more, to understand this connection between her sister and this man's daughter, to recover some piece of Iris she hadn't known existed. "Can you tell me about Anna?" she asked. Graham's face softened for the first time, a hint of warmth breaking through the grief. "She loved stories. Could read before she was 4. Drew pictures constantly, always people, always happy scenes. She wanted to be an artist when she grew up." He paused, correcting himself. "She wanted to be an artist." The past tense hung heavy between them. "Iris loved stories too," Vivian offered. "She taught 2nd grade for 20 years. Always said children saw the world more clearly than adults because they hadn't learned to be cynical yet." Anna said something similar once. Said Iris told her that sadness and joy could live in the same heart, and that was okay. "That's how you knew you were really alive." Graham's voice cracked slightly. "She said that during her last week." Vivian closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "That sounds like Iris." They sat together as the morning grew brighter. Two people who'd never met, but who shared something profound, not just grief, but connection to two souls who had found each other in this quiet place. Vivian looked at Graham's worn clothes, his tired face, the way he kept glancing at Anna's grave as if making sure she was still there. "Where are you staying?" she asked gently. Graham hesitated, then shrugged. "Around. I've got a spot by the river. It's dry, mostly. You're homeless." It wasn't a question. Graham didn't deny it. "Medical bills," he said simply. "Sold everything. The house, my carpentry workshop, my truck, everything. Thought if I could just get her through one more treatment, one more trial." He stopped, unable to continue. Vivienne understood. You'd sell your soul for someone you loved. Graham had just sold his life instead. "I have a guest house," she said. "It's empty." "You could stay there." Graham shook his head immediately. "I appreciate it, but no, I don't take charity. It's not charity. I could use someone to help with the property. The garden's overgrown, things need fixing. I'm never there anyway." It was a lie, but a kind one. I said no. His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm fine where I am. I need to be near her right now." Vivian wanted to argue, to insist, to fix this problem the way she fixed everything else in her life. But something in Graham's face stopped her. He didn't need fixing. He needed respect. He needed to grieve in his own way, on his own terms. "I understand," she said instead. They sat in silence a while longer, until Vivienne finally stood, her knees stiff from kneeling. She looked down at Iris's grave, then at Graham, still sitting beside Anna's. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "If that's okay." Graham looked up at her, surprise flickering across his face. Then something else, maybe gratitude or relief at not being completely alone. "It's okay," he said. Vivienne walked back to her car, but before she got in, she looked back. Graham had returned to his position, head bowed, hands on his knees, a man keeping vigil beside his daughter's grave. And Vivienne realized with sudden clarity that she was looking at the truest form of love she'd ever witnessed. She drove back to Palo Alto in silence, her mind full of Iris and Anna, of secret friendships and kindnesses she'd never known about. That night, in her empty mansion, she opened her laptop and began searching through old emails, looking for any mention of a child, a cemetery, anything that might tell her more about this hidden part of her sister's life. She found nothing. Iris had kept this sacred private, but Vivian had found Graham, and somehow she knew Iris would want her to come back, would want her to be there, in that quiet place under the oak tree, where grief was honest and connection was real. So she would return. Tomorrow and the day after that, for as long as it took to understand what her sister had known, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply sit beside someone in their pain and let them know they're not alone. Vivian returned to the cemetery the next morning with 2 cups of coffee and a bag of pastries from a bakery in town. She told herself she was just being considerate, that anyone would do the same. But the truth was, she'd barely slept, her mind circling around Graham and Anna, around Iris, and the secret friendship Vivian had known nothing about. Graham was there as she'd somehow known he would be. He sat on the same patch of ground, though this time he was awake, staring at Anna's headstone with an expression of such profound loss that Vivian almost turned around and left. Some grief was too private to witness, but he looked up as she approached, and his face registered something, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement that her presence wasn't unwelcome. "I brought coffee," she said, holding up the cups. "I didn't know how you'd take it, so I brought cream and sugar separately." Graham stood slowly, his movements careful, like a man much older than his years. "Black is fine." "Thank you." They sat together on the bench nearby, a weathered wooden thing that had probably been there for decades. Vivian handed him the coffee and opened the pastry bag, offering it to him. He hesitated, then took a croissant, eating it slowly, methodically, like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a while. "You didn't have to come back," Graham said after a long silence. "I know." Vivian sipped her coffee, watching the morning light filter through the oak branches. "But I wanted to. I keep thinking about what you said yesterday. About Iris and Anna sitting here together." Graham nodded, finishing his croissant. "Anna talked about her all the time. Said Iris understood things other adults didn't. Said she never treated her like she was sick, just like she was Anna. That sounds exactly like Iris, Vivian said softly. And she always saw people, not their circumstances. Your sister was a good woman. Yes, she was. Vivian paused, gathering courage. Can I ask what happened? To Iris and Anna, I mean. How they really met. Graham leaned back against the bench, his eyes distant with memory. It was about 1.5 years ago. We'd just finished a particularly rough round of chemotherapy. Anna was weak, nauseous, losing her hair for the 2nd time. She asked if we could come here instead of going straight home. Said the hospital made her feel like she was dying, but the cemetery made her feel alive. He smiled slightly at the paradox. I didn't understand it at first. What 8-year-old wants to spend time in a cemetery? But she loved it here. The quiet, the trees, the birds. She'd bring her sketchbook and draw. We'd read together under that oak tree. He gestured to the massive tree that sheltered both graves. One day, a woman was sitting right there at the grave next to ours. She was crying. Anna noticed. Anna always noticed when people were hurting. She walked over and asked if the lady was okay. Vivienne could picture it perfectly. Anna, small and brave despite her illness, approaching a stranger's grief with the fearless compassion of a child. Iris told her she'd lost someone she loved, Graham continued. Anna said she understood, that she was scared of losing people too. They talked for maybe 20 minutes. Anna showed her some drawings. Iris told her about teaching, about books she loved. When we left, Anna made me promise to come back the next week. And Iris was here, Vivian said. She was here. And the week after that, and the week after that. It became their routine. Tuesday afternoons, rain or shine. Iris would bring books, classics, fairy tales, poetry. She'd read to Anna for hours. Sometimes I'd sit with them. Sometimes I'd walk around, give them their space. They had this connection I couldn't quite explain. Graham's voice grew thick with emotion. During Anna's worst days, when the treatments were failing and we knew... He stopped, swallowed hard. When we knew she wasn't going to make it, Iris still came. Every Tuesday. She'd sit right here with Anna, hold her hand and read to her. The last book they read together was The Secret Garden. Vivian's breath caught. Iris loved that book. Read it to her students every year. Anna loved it too. Said it was about things coming back to life, about hope. Graham pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small piece of paper, carefully folded. She drew this. The week before she died. She wanted me to give it to Iris, but... He unfolded the paper, and Vivian leaned closer to see. It was a crayon drawing, simple but beautiful. Two figures sat under a large tree, surrounded by flowers. One was clearly meant to be Anna, the other an adult woman. Above them, the sun shone bright yellow, and birds flew in a blue sky. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, me and Miss Iris in the secret garden. She says, even when we're sad, beautiful things can grow. Tears blurred Vivian's vision. She pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome by the sweetness of it, the innocence, the profound wisdom in that simple sentence. I never got to give it to her, Graham said quietly. Anna died on September 8th. I didn't know where Iris lived, didn't have a phone number. I was going to ask her the next Tuesday, but he gestured to Iris's grave. She was already gone. She died 3 years ago, Vivian said. September 2nd. Graham's eyes widened. The week before Anna... Yes. They sat in stunned silence, the weight of that timing settling over them. Anna had drawn that picture not knowing Iris was already gone, had spent her final days wanting to thank someone who could no longer receive it. I'm so sorry, Vivian whispered. If I'd known, if Iris had told me... It's not your fault, Graham said firmly. Iris probably had her reasons for keeping it private. Some things are too precious to share with the whole world. Vivian understood that, but it still hurt. Hurt that Iris had been struggling, had found comfort in this cemetery, in reading to a dying child, and hadn't felt she could tell her own sister. Why didn't she tell me? Vivian asked, not really expecting an answer. We talked every week. She never mentioned Anna, never mentioned coming here. Graham was quiet for a moment. Then maybe she needed something that was just hers. You were off building empires, Anna told me about you once. said Iris was proud of her sister, the brilliant businesswoman. Maybe Iris needed a place where she wasn't anyone's little sister, wasn't in anyone's shadow, where she was just herself, doing something that mattered in a quiet way. The words stung because they were true. Vivienne had always been the successful one, the ambitious one, the one everyone talked about. Iris had been Vivienne's sister more often than she'd been just Iris. I didn't mean to make her feel... Vivienne started. I don't think you did, Graham interrupted gently. I think she loved you. But I also think she needed this. Anna needed this. They found each other when they both needed someone who understood what it felt like to be in a hard place. Vivienne looked at the drawing again, at the careful way Anna had drawn the flowers, the bright sun, the smiling faces. Can I keep this? Or did you want... You should have it, Graham said. Iris was Anna's friend. You're Iris's sister. It belongs with you. Vivienne folded the drawing carefully and placed it in her purse like the treasure it was. They sat together in silence, drinking their coffee as morning turned toward afternoon. Other visitors came and went, an elderly woman placing flowers on a grave, a young couple walking slowly through the grounds, a man in a uniform paying respects to what was likely a fellow veteran. Finally, Graham spoke again. She's really gone, isn't she? Anna, I mean. I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a nightmare. I know, Vivienne said. I felt that way about Iris for months. Still do sometimes. Does it get better? Vivienne considered lying, offering false comfort. But Graham deserved honesty. It gets different. The sharp edges dull a little. You learn to carry it. But it doesn't go away. Graham nodded slowly, accepting this truth. I don't think I want it to go away. If the pain goes away, doesn't that mean she's really gone? That she didn't matter? No, Vivienne said firmly. The pain fading doesn't mean she didn't matter. It means you're honoring her by continuing to live. That's what they'd want, Iris and Anna both. Is that what you're doing? Honoring Iris by living? The question hit home. Vivienne thought about her life. The empty mansion, the endless work, the relationships she'd sacrificed for success. Was she really living? Or was she just existing, going through the motions, filling the emptiness with achievement because she didn't know what else to do? I'm trying, she said finally. I'm not sure I'm doing it very well. Graham looked at her, really looked at her, and Vivienne had the uncomfortable feeling he saw through all her wealth and success to the lonely woman underneath. Maybe we can figure it out together, he said. How to keep living when the person who made life worthwhile is gone. Vivienne felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the armor she'd built around her heart, letting in the smallest sliver of light. Maybe we can, she agreed. They sat together until the afternoon sun began to slant through the trees, casting long shadows across the graves. Before she left, Vivienne looked at the hospital bracelet still on Graham's wrist, Anna's name printed in faded black ink. You're still wearing her bracelet, she observed. Graham touched it reflexively. I can't take it off yet. It's the last thing she wore. The last thing that touched her skin. Vivienne understood. She still had Iris's sweater in her closet, unwashed, still carrying the faint scent of her sister's perfume. Some things you weren't ready to let go of. Maybe you never would be. I'll be back tomorrow, she said. I'll be here, Graham replied. As Vivienne walked to her car, she realized something had changed. Yesterday, she'd come to visit her sister's grave. Today, she'd come to see Graham. Tomorrow, she'd be coming for both reasons. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something she couldn't quite name yet. Something that felt almost like hope. Vivienne came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. It became a rhythm. She'd make the drive from Palo Alto before dawn, arrive at the cemetery by 8, find Graham either sitting by Anna's grave or sleeping on the bench nearby. She always brought coffee and food, and he always accepted with quiet gratitude, though she could see the pride warring with necessity in his eyes each time. On the fourth day, she arrived to find him shivering in the morning chill, his thin jacket inadequate against the October cold. That afternoon, she returned with a heavy coat, weatherproof and warm, along with gloves and a wool blanket. I can't accept these, Graham said, but his hands were already reaching for the coat. You can, and you will, Vivian replied. Iris would never forgive me if I let you freeze out here. It was the right thing to say. Graham put on the coat without further protest. They fell into a pattern of conversation. Slow, meandering talks about their loved ones, about life before loss reshaped everything. Vivian learned that Graham had been a carpenter, a skilled one, who'd built custom furniture and cabinetry for 20 years. He'd owned a small workshop in town, had steady clients, had been teaching Anna the basics of woodworking before she got sick. I sold it all, he said one morning, his voice flat with old grief. The workshop, the tools, everything. Anna's mother, my ex-wife, she left when we got the diagnosis. Said she couldn't watch our daughter die. So it was just me and Anna, and the medical bills kept coming, even with insurance, the experimental treatments, the specialists. He shook his head. I sold the house last. Thought we'd find somewhere smaller after she beat it, after she got better. He said it without bitterness, just stating facts. But Vivienne saw the weight of it in the set of his shoulders, in the way his hands unconsciously formed shapes in the air, like they remembered building things even when there was nothing left to build. What about Anna's mother? Vivienne asked gently. She haven't heard from her since she left. 3 years, not a word. Not even when he stopped, unable to finish. I don't think about her anymore. She made her choice. Vivienne thought about her own choices, the marriage she'd ended because her husband wanted children and she wanted corner offices, the relationships she'd sacrificed for late nights at the office, the distance she'd let grow between herself and Iris, different choices, maybe, but all leading to the same place, alone with regrets you couldn't undo. On the 5th morning, Vivienne noticed the hospital bracelet still on Graham's wrist and asked about it. He looked down at it, touched the plastic band with his other hand. It's from her last admission. They put it on September 1st. She died a week later. His voice cracked. I can't take it off yet. Why not? Because if I take it off, it's like I'm letting her go. Like I'm saying she's really gone and not coming back. He looked up at Vivienne, his eyes raw with pain. I know that sounds crazy. I know she's gone. I buried her. But this bracelet, it's the last thing that connected us. The last physical thing that proved she was real, that she was mine. Vivienne reached out and gently touched the bracelet. Anna's name was printed in block letters, Anna Tierney, Dob 03-15, 2017. It doesn't sound crazy, she said softly. I still have all of Iris's voicemails saved on my phone. 53 of them. I listen to them sometimes, just to hear her voice. Just to pretend she's still here, calling to tell me about her day. Graham's eyes filled with tears. Does it help? Sometimes. Sometimes it makes it worse. Vivienne withdrew her hand. But I can't delete them, not yet. Maybe not ever. They sat in silence, two people clinging to fragments of the dead, knowing it was futile, but unable to let go. Tell me about Anna, Vivienne said. Not about her being sick. Tell me who she was before. Graham's face softened, the grief making room for something warmer. She was funny. Had this giggle that made everyone around her laugh too. She loved animals, wanted to rescue every stray cat and injured bird she found. Drew constantly, always people with huge smiles. She believed everyone was basically good, that if you were just kind enough, people would be kind back. She sounds like she was a beautiful soul. She was. Too good for this world, people would say. But I hated when they said that, even though I knew they meant well. Graham's jaw tightened. She wasn't too good for this world. She belonged here. She deserved to grow up, to fall in love, to have dreams and make mistakes and figure out who she was. She deserved more than 8 years. The anger underneath his words was the first real emotion, besides grief, Vivienne had seen from him. It was almost a relief. Anger meant he was still fighting, still engaged with life, even if that life felt impossibly cruel. You're right, Vivienne said. She did deserve more. Iris told her something once, Graham continued, his voice quieter now. Anna repeated it to me near the end. She said Iris told her that being angry at God or the universe or whatever you believe in, that was okay. That it meant you cared, that you hadn't given up. She said anger was just love with nowhere to go. Vivienne felt tears sting her eyes. That was so perfectly Iris. taking a child's rage and fear and making it acceptable, making it human. I'm angry too, Vivian admitted. At Iris for not telling me she was struggling, at myself for not seeing it, at the universe for taking her when I still needed her. Does the anger help? Not really, but it feels better than the alternative. What's the alternative? Numbness, pretending it doesn't matter, going back to my life like nothing changed. Vivian looked at her hands, at the expensive watch on her wrist that cost more than most people's cars. I tried that for 3 years. Threw myself into work, closed billion-dollar deals, got my face on magazine covers. Everyone said I was handling it so well, being so strong. But you weren't. No, I was just running, building walls so high that grief couldn't reach me. Except it did anyway. It always does. Graham nodded slowly. After Anna died, people kept telling me to be strong, to stay positive, to believe she was in a better place. But I didn't want her in a better place. I wanted her here with me, even if here was hard, even if here hurt. I know, Vivian said. I wanted Iris here too. Still do. They sat together as the sun climbed higher, warming the October air. Other visitors came and went, but Vivian barely noticed them. Her whole world had narrowed to this bench, this man, these 2 graves that had somehow brought them together. I should let you work, Graham said eventually. You must have important things to do. Companies to run. Vivian thought about her calendar, the meetings Paulette had rescheduled, the calls she'd ignored, the emails piling up unread. A week ago, those things had felt crucial, life and death. Now they felt distant and small. Nothing more important than this, she said. Graham looked at her skeptically. Sitting in a cemetery with a homeless man. Sitting with someone who understands, she corrected. That's rarer than you think. He didn't argue, just nodded, and Vivian realized she meant it. In the past week, she'd felt more real, more present, more human than she had in years. Grief had stripped away the pretense, left her raw and honest in a way she'd forgotten how to be. Same time tomorrow? She asked, standing to leave. I'll be here. Vivian walked to her car, but before she drove away, she looked back. Graham had returned to Anna's grave, kneeling beside it, his hand resting on the grass. And she thought about what he'd said, that the bracelet proved Anna was real, that she'd existed. That night, in her empty mansion, Vivian pulled out Anna's drawing and placed it on her desk where she could see it. 2 figures under a tree, surrounded by flowers and hope. Proof that Iris had been loved by someone other than Vivian. Proof that even in her darkest time, Iris had found purpose in sitting with a dying child and making her feel less alone. Maybe that was what Vivian was doing now, sitting with Graham, making him feel less alone. Not because she could fix anything or bring Anna back, but because showing up mattered. Because witnessing someone's grief honored it, made it real. She fell asleep that night thinking about hospital bracelets and saved voicemails, about the things we hold on to when everything else is gone. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She lay in her king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Graham shivering on a cemetery bench while she had 6 empty bedrooms in a house too large for one person. The disparity felt obscene. But more than that, she kept thinking about Iris, about the secret life her sister had lived in those final months, the friendship with Anna that Vivian had known nothing about. She got up at 2 in the morning and went to the spare room where she'd stored Iris's belongings after the funeral. Boxes she'd packed but never opened, too painful to face. Now she pulled them out, one by one, searching for any mention of Anna, any clue about this hidden part of her sister's life. In the 3rd box, beneath folded sweaters and photo albums, she found a leather-bound journal. Iris's handwriting on the first page. Private Thoughts, 2021-2022. Vivian's hands trembled as she opened it. She'd never read Iris's private journals before. It felt like a violation. But Iris was gone, and Vivian needed to understand. The early entries were mundane, notes about students, grocery lists, observations about the changing seasons. But then, dated April 2021, I went to the cemetery today. I don't know why. I just felt pulled there like something was waiting for me. Sat under the big oak and cried for an hour. Nobody saw. Nobody knew. It felt good to let it out somewhere besides my empty house. Vivian's throat tightened. She'd had no idea Iris was struggling, that she was going to cemeteries to cry alone. She kept reading. More entries about the cemetery, about the peace Iris found there, about feeling like a failure because she'd never married, never had children, never lived up to the potential everyone said she had. Vivian called today. Told me about her latest deal, $200 million. I said I was proud of her. I'm proud of her. But I also felt so small. What have I done with my life? Taught the same lessons for 20 years. No husband, no children, no empire. Just me and my empty classroom and my empty house. Tears blurred Vivian's vision. She'd never known Iris felt this way. Had never imagined her gentle, content sister was comparing herself and feeling inadequate. Then an entry from June 2021. Met the most remarkable child today. Anna, 8 years old, bald from chemotherapy, sitting under the oak tree drawing pictures of flowers. She asked if I was sad. I said yes. She said she was sad too, that being sick was scary, but the cemetery made her feel peaceful. We sat together for an hour. I read her some of The Secret Garden. She said it was her new favorite book. Her father seems kind but exhausted. I hope I see them again. The entries continued, chronicling the growing friendship between Iris and Anna. Tuesday visits became routine. Iris wrote about the books they read, the drawings Anna made, the conversations that ranged from silly to profound. Anna asked me today if I was lonely. I lied and said no, but she looked at me with those wise eyes and said it's okay to be lonely. My dad's lonely too. But we have each other, so it's a little less lonely. This child is teaching me more than I ever taught anyone. Vivian pressed the journal to her chest, overwhelmed by the realization that Iris had been lonelier than she'd ever let on. That she'd found companionship and purpose with a dying child in a cemetery, while her own sister had been too busy building empires to notice. She kept reading entry after entry, watching Iris come alive on the pages. The friendship with Anna had given her something to look forward to, a reason to get up on Tuesdays, a sense that she mattered to someone. Then an entry from August 2022, just weeks before Iris died. Anna's treatments aren't working. The doctors say there's nothing more they can do. Her father is devastated. I sat with them today and we all cried together. Anna asked me to promise I'll keep reading to her until the end. I promised. How can I not? This child has given me more than she knows. She made me feel needed again. She made me feel like my life has purpose beyond just existing. The next entry was dated August 20th, 2022. I'm tired. So tired. Some days I wonder if it's worth fighting anymore. But then I think of Anna, who's fighting so hard even though she's just 8 years old. If she can be brave, so can I. Tuesday, I'll bring her Anne of Green Gables. She'll love Anne, another girl who feels like she doesn't quite fit in the world. There were only 3 more entries after that. The last one was dated August 28th, 2022, 5 days before Iris died. Saw Anna today. She's so weak now, can barely hold the book herself. But she smiled when I arrived. Said, "Miss Iris, you came, like there was any chance I wouldn't." We read under the oak tree. She fell asleep in my arms. I held her and thought about how precious life is, how fleeting. I hope when I die, someone holds me like this, someone who makes me feel like I mattered. The journal ended there. 5 days later, Iris had died suddenly of a brain aneurysm. No warning, no chance to say goodbye, just gone. And Anna had lost her friend without knowing why Iris stopped coming. Had spent her final days wondering maybe where Miss Iris had gone. Vivian wept into the early morning hours, grief and guilt mixing into something unbearable. She'd failed Iris, had been so focused on her own success that she'd missed all the signs of her sister's loneliness, her depression, her need for connection. But she'd found Graham. And maybe, somehow, she could honor Iris by being there for him the way she hadn't been there for her sister. She fell asleep with the journal open beside her, and when she woke at dawn, she knew what she had to do. She drove to the cemetery earlier than usual, arriving just as the sun broke the horizon. Graham was asleep on the bench, the coat she'd given him pulled tight around his shoulders. She sat quietly nearby, waiting for him to wake. When he finally stirred, his eyes found her immediately. "You're here early. I found something," Vivian said. "Something I need to show you." She handed him the journal, open to the first entry about Anna. Graham read slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to wonder to grief, so profound Vivian had to look away. He read every entry about Anna, sometimes pausing to wipe his eyes, sometimes reading passages twice, as if memorizing them. When he finished, he closed the journal carefully and held it against his chest. "She loved her," he said, his voice breaking. "Iris really loved Anna." "Yes," Vivian whispered. "And Anna loved her too. Anna talked about Miss Iris all the time. How kind she was, how she never treated Anna like she was sick, how she made everything seem less scary." Graham looked at Vivian, with tears streaming down his face. "When Iris stopped coming, Anna asked about her every Tuesday. I didn't know what to tell her. I thought maybe Iris just got busy or—" He stopped, understanding dawning. "She died, right before Anna. August 28th, Vivian confirmed. Brain aneurysm, instant. She didn't suffer." Graham was quiet for a long time, processing this. "Then Anna never knew. She spent her last days thinking Miss Iris had abandoned her." "No," Vivian said firmly. "Anna knew Iris loved her. That was clear in everything they shared. Sometimes love is stronger than presence. Iris would have been there if she could." Graham nodded, but the pain remained. Two people who'd found comfort in each other, both gone within weeks, neither knowing the other wouldn't be there anymore. "There's something else," Vivian said quietly. She pulled out a manila envelope. "I contacted my lawyer yesterday. Did some digging. Iris left a trust fund. It was supposed to help with Anna's medical expenses." Graham's head snapped up. "What? It was modest, $50,000. Iris set it up 6 months before she died. The fund was supposed to be distributed to you for Anna's care, but after Iris died, the executor couldn't find you. The money sat in probate." Vivian handed him the envelope. "It was eventually used to pay some of your outstanding medical bills. I have the records here." Graham opened the envelope with shaking hands, staring at the documents inside. Payment receipts, legal papers, proof that Iris had tried to help even beyond her death. "She did this?" he whispered. "For Anna? For Anna, for you, because she cared." Graham covered his face with his hands and sobbed, deep, wrenching sounds that came from a place beyond words. Vivian moved closer, putting her hand on his shoulder, letting him grieve not just for Anna, but for Iris, for the kindness he'd never known existed until it was too late to say thank you. When he finally composed himself, he looked at Vivian with something new in his eyes, not just shared grief, but gratitude, connection. "Your sister was an angel," he said. "So was your daughter," Vivian replied. They sat together as morning brightened into day, two people bound by the love of two souls who'd found each other when they needed it most. And Vivian made a silent promise to both Iris and Anna. She wouldn't waste this second chance. She'd be present. She'd show up. She'd honor their memories by living the way they'd lived, with open hearts and quiet kindness. 3 days after showing Graham the journal, Vivian made him an offer she'd been considering since the first morning she'd found him sleeping on the cemetery bench. "Come stay at my house," she said. "Not as charity, as my caretaker. The property needs work. The garden's completely overgrown. There are repairs I've been putting off for years. I'm never there anyway. I could use someone to look after things." Graham shook his head immediately. "I already told you." "I know what you told me. But hear me out." Vivian kept her voice calm, reasonable. "You're sleeping on a bench in October. It's getting colder every night. In a few weeks, it'll be freezing. You'll get sick, maybe die out here, and then what? Anna wouldn't want that. Iris wouldn't want that. Don't—" Graham's voice was sharp. "Don't use them to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating you. I'm telling you the truth." Vivian met his eyes steadily. "You deserve better than this. You deserve a warm bed and regular meals, and a chance to figure out what comes next. Let me help you. Please." Graham looked away, jaw tight with the internal struggle between pride and necessity. Finally, he said, "If I do this, I work for it. I'm not a charity case. Fine, you work for it. The garden needs complete restoration. The fence is falling down. The guest house needs painting. There's plenty to do. And I can still come here to see Anna every day if you want. It's only 20 minutes from my house. Graham was quiet for a long moment, staring at Anna's grave as if asking permission. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, but if you start treating me like some kind of pet project, I'm gone. Deal, Vivian said, relief flooding through her. That afternoon, she drove Graham to her estate in Palo Alto. He sat silently in the passenger seat of her Tesla, staring out at the landscape changing from rural to suburban to wealthy. When they pulled through her gates and he saw the house, a modern mansion of glass and steel set on 5 acres, he let out a low whistle. This is where you live? Yes, too much house for one person, I know. Too much house for 10 people, Graham muttered. She showed him the guest house, a small cottage at the back of the property with its own kitchen, bathroom and bedroom. It was simple, but comfortable, far nicer than anywhere Graham had lived in the past year. This is mine? He asked, disbelief in his voice. It's yours, Vivian confirmed. There are clothes in the closet that should fit my ex-husband's things. He never came back for them. And there's food in the kitchen. Make yourself at home. Graham set down his backpack, his only possession, and looked around the space like he couldn't quite believe it was real. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just rest. Get your strength back. We can talk about the work tomorrow. But Graham shook his head. Show me the garden now. I want to see what needs doing. Vivian led him outside to what had once been a carefully landscaped yard, but was now a tangle of overgrown shrubs, dying grass, and flower beds choked with weeds. Her ex-husband had hired gardeners weekly. After the divorce, Vivian had let them go, too busy with work to care what the property looked like. Graham walked slowly through the space, his carpenter's eye assessing the work needed. He knelt beside a flower bed, pulling away dead leaves to reveal soil beneath. This could be beautiful again, he said quietly. With time and work. Do you know about gardens? I thought you were a carpenter. I was. Graham stood, brushing dirt from his hands. But Anna loved gardens. After she got sick, I started learning about plants, thinking maybe we'd have our own garden someday, somewhere she could sit and draw and feel peaceful. His voice caught on the past tense, the dreams that would never materialize. She would have loved this space, Vivian said gently. Yes, she would have. Graham looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Maybe I could build something here. For her, a memorial garden. Would that be all right? Vivian felt warmth spread through her chest. I think that would be perfect. Over the next week, Graham threw himself into the work with an intensity that worried Vivian. He started at dawn and worked until dark, clearing weeds, trimming overgrown bushes, mapping out where new plants would go. His hands, already calloused from years of carpentry, grew rougher from the soil and tools. Vivienne watched him from her home office window, neglecting conference calls, to observe the way he moved through the space. Methodical, purposeful, almost meditative. She'd never seen someone grieve through physical labor before, but that's what he was doing. Each pulled weed, each trimmed branch was an act of mourning and remembering. She started joining him in the evenings after work, learning the names of plants, helping with the simpler tasks. They worked mostly in silence, the quiet companionship more valuable than conversation. But sometimes Graham would tell her stories about Anna, how she'd wanted to plant sunflowers because they were taller than her, how she'd insisted on naming every plant they saw like they were pets. She would have named every flower in this garden, Graham said one evening, a small smile on his face. Would have given them all personalities. The roses would be fancy ladies. The daisies would be cheerful friends. He stopped, the smile fading. I miss her voice. Sometimes I can't remember exactly how she sounded. I know, Vivian said softly. I'm starting to forget Iris's laugh. It terrifies me. They sat together on the ground, surrounded by tools and dirt, two people trying to hold on to memories that were already slipping away like water through fingers. Maybe that's why we do this, Graham said, gesturing to the garden. Build something permanent, something that won't fade, Maybe, Vivian agreed. One evening, Vivian's assistant Paulette stopped by to drop off documents. She found Vivian in the garden, dirt on her expensive jeans, helping Graham plant a row of lavender. "Vivian?" Paulette stared like she'd encountered an alien. "What are you doing?" "Planting lavender." "It's Anna's favorite," was Anna's favorite. Vivian stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Paulette, this is Graham." "Graham, my assistant Paulette." Paulette's eyes widened as recognition dawned. The homeless man from the cemetery, now living on Vivian's property. "Nice to meet you," she said carefully. "You too," Graham replied, polite but reserved. After he excused himself to get more soil, Paulette turned to Vivian. "What's going on? You've been missing meetings, ignoring emails, and now you're gardening with a homeless man?" "He's not homeless anymore. He's my caretaker. Vivian, I know what you're going to say. That I'm being reckless, that I don't know him, that this is some kind of grief-induced delusion." Vivian met Paulette's concerned gaze. "But I'm not delusional. I'm finally awake. For the first time in 3 years, I'm present in my own life." Paulette was quiet for a moment. "Then you seem different, calmer, more like the woman I first started working for, before Iris died and I became a machine." Vivian finished the sentence. "I know. I'm trying to find my way back." Paulette looked at the garden, at Graham working in the distance, at the dirt under Vivian's fingernails. "Okay, but be careful. Guard your heart a little. My heart's been guarded for 3 years. Look where that got me." After Paulette left, Vivian returned to the garden. Graham had found Anna's favorite book, The Secret Garden, tucked in his backpack, and was reading passages aloud as he worked, like Anna was there listening. "Where you tend a rose, a thistle cannot grow," he read. Anna loved that line. Said it meant if you put good things in the world, bad things couldn't take root. Vivienne knelt beside him, placing another lavender plant in the soil. She was a wise soul. She was. Graham carefully packed dirt around the plant's roots. "Some days I can't believe she was real. That I got to be her father for 8 years. It feels like a dream now. She was real. And this garden will prove it." They worked until darkness fell and stars appeared overhead, building something beautiful from grief and memory and hope that healing was possible even when it seemed impossible. 2 weeks into living at the guest house, Graham asked Vivian if he could retrieve something from storage. "His old tools," he said. "The ones he'd sold before Anna died, except for a few boxes he'd managed to keep, stored at a facility outside town when he could no longer afford the rent on them. The storage company sent a final notice last week," he explained, showing her the crumpled letter. "They're auctioning everything off in 3 days if I don't clear it out." "How much do you owe them?" $400. "I don't have it, but I thought maybe I could work it off somehow, or—" "I'll pay it," Vivian said immediately. Graham's jaw tightened. "No, I'm not asking for money." "I know you're not, but those tools are important to you. Consider it an advance on your wages." They drove to the storage facility the next morning. The unit was small, packed with plastic boxes and a few larger items covered in tarps. Graham stood at the entrance for a long moment before stepping inside, like he was entering sacred ground. He pulled back one of the tarps, revealing a wooden chest with intricate carvings on the lid. Even under the dust, Vivian could see the craftsmanship, detailed flowers and vines, each petal and leaf perfect. "I made this for Anna," Graham said quietly. "For her 9th birthday. She never got to see it finished." He opened the chest, and inside were more treasures. A hand-carved jewelry box, a set of wooden bookmarks with different designs, a small bird sculpted from cherry wood. Each piece was exquisite, the work of someone who understood both the material and the art. "Graham, these are beautiful," Vivian breathed. "Anna loved watching me work. Said the wood talked to me, told me what it wanted to be." He picked up one of the bookmarks, running his thumb over the smooth surface. "This was the last thing I made before she got too sick. I carved her name into it. Thought we'd use it in all the books we'd read together." Vivian saw the name etched delicately into the wood. Anna. Below it, a small bird in flight. "She wanted to be a bird," Graham said. "Said birds were free, could go anywhere. Could fly away from hospitals and needles and pain." His voice cracked. "The last thing she said to me before she died was, 'Dad, am I going to fly now?'" Vivienne felt tears slip down her cheeks. "What did you tell her?" "I told her yes, that she was going to fly higher and further than any bird ever had, that she'd be free." Graham carefully placed the bookmark back in the chest. "I don't know if I believe in heaven or any of that, but I needed her to believe it, needed her last moments to be about hope, not fear." They loaded the boxes into Vivienne's car in silence, Graham handling each one with reverence. When they returned to the estate, he carried everything to the guest house and unpacked slowly, examining each tool and creation like greeting old friends. That evening, Vivienne found him sitting on the guest house steps, holding the unfinished chest, staring at it with an expression of profound longing. "I should finish it," he said when he noticed her, "but I don't know if I can. Every time I think about picking up the tools, my hands they don't want to work. Like finishing it means accepting she's really gone." Vivienne sat beside him. "Maybe you're not ready yet." "That's okay. When will I be ready?" "It's been 2 months. Shouldn't I be, I don't know, better by now?" "There's no timeline for grief, Graham. No deadline where suddenly you're supposed to be over it and moving on." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, can I show you something?" He led her into the guest house, to a box he hadn't unpacked yet. Inside were dozens of drawings, Anna's artwork, preserved carefully between sheets of tissue paper. He spread them across the small kitchen table, and Vivienne saw the progression of a child's creativity, from simple stick figures to more complex scenes. One drawing in particular caught her eye. It showed a garden, lush and colourful, with a man and a little girl standing among the flowers. The man was clearly Graham. The girl was Anna, smiling, reaching up to touch a butterfly. "She drew this 2 weeks before she died," Graham said. "Told me this was what heaven would look like if she got to design it. A garden where she could be with me forever." Vivienne picked up the drawing carefully, studying the detail Anna had put into each flower, each blade of grass. She was talented. She was everything. Graham gathered the drawings back into the box, his movements gentle. "Sometimes I wake up and forget she's gone. Just for a second, I think about going to wake her up for school, or making her breakfast. Then I remember, and it's like losing her all over again. I do the same thing with Iris, reach for my phone to call her before I remember there's no one to call." Graham looked at her, really looked at her, and Vivienne saw understanding pass between them, the recognition that they were both trapped in this space between past and future, unable to fully inhabit either one. "The garden's helping," he said finally. "Gives me something to do with my hands, something to build, instead of just existing. Good, then keep building." Over the following days, Graham worked on the memorial garden with renewed focus. He sketched designs, planned layouts, researched which plants would thrive together. Vivienne watched him come alive in small ways, a spark of interest in his eyes when he found a rare plant variety, a moment of pride when a particularly difficult section came together. One afternoon, she came home from the office to find him building a wooden arbor at the garden's entrance. The wood was raw cedar, the joints perfectly fitted without nails or screws, traditional joinery that required real skill. "You're building again," she said, surprised. Graham looked up from his work, a slight flush on his face. Seemed right. The garden needed an entrance, something to mark the threshold between the ordinary world and this space. "It's beautiful. It's not finished yet." He ran his hand over the smooth wood. "But it feels good, using my hands this way again. Creating something that will last." Vivienne helped him raise the arbor into place, holding it steady while he secured it. When they stepped back to admire their work, she felt a swell of pride, not just in the structure itself, but in what it represented. Graham was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing nonetheless. That night, after dinner, they'd started eating together most evenings. Graham pulled out Anna's copy of The Secret Garden. The book was worn, pages dog-eared, margins filled with Anna's notes in crayon and pencil. "Would you read with me?" he asked. "Anna and Iris did this. Seems right that we should too." They sat on the couch in the main house, the book between them, taking turns reading chapters aloud. Anna's notes were heartbreaking and hopeful in equal measure. Mary is lonely like me. I want a secret garden too. Maybe when I'm better, Dad will make me a garden. When they reached a passage about things growing back after winter, Graham stopped reading, his voice too thick to continue. Vivienne took over, finishing the chapter while he sat with his head bowed, tears falling silently. After she closed the book, they sat in silence. Finally, Graham said, "Thank you for everything. For not giving up on me when I was just some homeless man in a cemetery. You were never just some homeless man. You were someone who loved his daughter enough to give up everything trying to save her. That's not nothing, Graham. That's everything." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much pain, but were learning slowly to see hope again too. "Iris would be proud of you. The way you've helped me. The way you show up. I'm just trying to honor her memory. And Anna's. You're doing more than that. You're saving my life." Vivienne felt her throat tighten. "You're saving mine too. You just don't know it yet." They sat together until late into the night, two broken people learning how to be whole again, one small moment at a time. Vivienne arrived at the cemetery on a Tuesday morning, their usual day to visit together, and found Graham standing motionless in front of a notice posted at the entrance gate. His face was pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Graham, what's wrong?" He didn't answer, just pointed at the notice. Vivienne stepped closer to read it, her stomach sinking with each word. Notice of intended sale. This property has been acquired by Westridge Development Corporation. All burial plots will be relocated to neighboring facilities within 90 days per state regulations. For information regarding relocation of remains, contact. "They're selling it," Graham said, his voice hollow. "They're going to dig up Anna and move her somewhere else." Vivienne read the notice again, her business mind automatically processing the details. The cemetery had been privately owned. The owner had died. The heirs were selling to developers who planned to, she saw it in the fine print, build luxury condominiums on the site. "This can't be legal," she said. "It is. I checked." Graham's voice was flat, defeated. "California law allows it as long as they relocate the remains properly and notify next of kin. We have 90 days. 90 days before what? Before they start digging up the graves and moving everyone. Anna, Iris, all of them." He turned to face her, and the anguish in his eyes was unbearable. "This is the only place I have left of her. The only place that feels sacred. And they're going to destroy it to build condos for rich people." Vivienne felt rage building in her chest. "Let me make some calls. There has to be something we can do." She spent the rest of the day on the phone with lawyers, city officials, and historical preservation societies. The news got worse with each call. The cemetery wasn't historically designated. The sale was legal. The development company had already pulled permits. Construction would begin in 4 months. But it was her last call that made her blood run cold. "Miss Ashmore," her corporate attorney said carefully, "I need to inform you of something. Westridge Development is being funded primarily by Ashmore Capital Ventures." Vivienne's heart stopped. "What?" "Your company's investment arm approved a $50 million stake in the project 6 months ago. You're the primary investor." She felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "That's impossible. I would have known. The board approved it while you were dealing with your sister's estate. They didn't want to burden you with routine investment decisions. It's all in the quarterly reports." Quarterly reports she hadn't read in months. She'd been so lost in grief, so checked out from her own company, that she'd let the board make major decisions without her oversight. "Pull out," she said immediately. "Withdraw our investment. Kill the deal. Miss Ashmore, we can't just... I don't care. Find a way." She hung up and called her board chair, demanding an emergency meeting. Within 2 hours, she was sitting in her conference room, facing 8 board members who looked increasingly uncomfortable. "The cemetery project," Vivienne said without preamble. "We're pulling out." "That's not possible," said Richard Chen, the CFO. "We have contractual obligations. If we pull out now, we forfeit the entire investment plus penalties. We're talking $75 million. I don't care about the money. The shareholders will care," another board member interjected. This is a projected 300% return over 5 years. It's one of our best investments." Vivian stared at them, these people she'd worked with for years, and realized they didn't understand. Couldn't understand. To them, this was just numbers on a spreadsheet. They had no idea what that cemetery meant, what they were destroying. "That land is sacred," she said quietly. "There are families who visit their loved ones there. People who have nowhere else to go to feel close to the people they've lost. It's unfortunate," Richard said, "but it's also legal and profitable. Our duty is to the shareholders. Our duty is to be decent human beings first. With all due respect, Ms. Ashmore, you've been distracted lately. Missing meetings, delegating decisions, spending time on personal projects. The board has been covering for you, but this is exactly why we need you focused. We can't make emotional decisions based on personal feelings." Vivian stood slowly, rage and heartbreak warring inside her. "If you won't pull out of this deal, I will resign as CEO and publicly oppose it." The room went silent. Richard leaned forward, his expression hardening. "If you resign, your shares revert to voting shares controlled by the board. You'll have no say in company decisions, and the project will continue anyway. Then I'll fight you in court. I'll go to the media. You'll destroy the company you built," Richard interrupted. "And for what? A cemetery that's going to be developed either way? Be realistic, Vivian. This is business." She looked around the table at faces that were professionally sympathetic, but ultimately unmoved. These were people she'd hired, mentored, worked beside for years. And not one of them understood why this mattered. "Meeting adjourned," she said coldly and walked out. She drove straight to the cemetery, where Graham was still sitting beside Anna's grave. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the headstones. He looked up as she approached, and she saw in his eyes that he already knew something was wrong. "I have to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "And you're going to hate me." Graham stood slowly. "What is it?" "The development company, Westridge. They're being funded by my company, by me. I'm the primary investor in the project that's going to destroy this place." She watched his face change, watched the trust drain away and be replaced by something harder. "Betrayal. You knew." His voice was dangerously quiet. "No, I swear I didn't know. The board approved it months ago when I wasn't paying attention. I just found out today. Your company is going to dig up my daughter's grave to build condos, and you didn't know?" He took a step back from her. "How do you not know something like that?" "I was grieving. I wasn't focused on work. I let them make decisions without me." Convenient excuse. "It's not an excuse, it's the truth." Vivian felt tears streaming down her face. "Graham, please. I told them to pull out. I threatened to resign. But they won't, so resign. Kill the deal." "I can't. If I resign, they get control of my shares. The project continues anyway. I'd have no power to stop it." Graham stared at her, his expression a mix of pain and anger and something that looked almost like pity. "So, what you're telling me is that your money is going to destroy the only place I have left of Anna, and there's nothing you can do about it?" "I'm going to fight them. I'll find lawyers, You're a billionaire and you can't stop your own company from desecrating my daughter's grave." Graham's voice rose. "What was all of this then? The guest house, the garden, the friendship. Was it guilt? Were you trying to make yourself feel better about what your money was going to do?" "No. Graham, that's not... I think you should leave." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You're one of them, the rich people who think money gives them the right to destroy anything that gets in their way. I was stupid to think you were different." He turned away from her, facing Anna's grave. "Just go, Vivian. I don't want your help anymore." "Graham, go!" She stood there for a moment longer, wanting to argue, to make him understand. But the set of his shoulders told her there was nothing she could say right now that would matter. He'd built walls around himself again, and she was on the outside. Vivienne walked back to her car on shaking legs. She sat in the driver's seat, staring at the cemetery through her tears, watching Graham kneel beside Anna's grave like he was apologizing to her. She'd found him here 2 months ago, broken and homeless. She'd thought she was helping him heal, Instead, she'd become part of the system that was destroying the last thing he had left. Her phone buzzed with messages from her assistant, her board members, her lawyers. They all wanted to know what she was going to do, how she was going to handle this PR nightmare. But Vivian wasn't thinking about PR. She was thinking about Anna's small headstone and Iris's simple grave and the oak tree that sheltered them both. She was thinking about Graham's face when he realized she was part of the problem, not the solution. She was thinking about what Iris had written in her journal. Success is only meaningful if it serves something greater than yourself. Vivian had built an empire. She had billions of dollars and more power than most people would ever dream of. But she couldn't save a single cemetery, couldn't protect the sacred ground where two people she cared about were buried, couldn't keep her promise to Graham that she'd be different from all the other wealthy people who'd failed him. She started the car and drove home to her empty mansion, to the memorial garden Graham had built with his own hands, and she knew with absolute certainty what she had to do, even if it cost her everything. Vivian didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk, staring at financial reports, legal documents, and corporate bylaws until her eyes burned. There had to be a way to stop this. Some loophole, some strategy, some move she could make that would save the cemetery without destroying everything she'd built. But every path led to the same conclusion. She couldn't have both. At 3 a.m, she opened Iris's journal again, reading through every entry until she reached the last one. Her sister's final written words, 5 days before she died. "I hope when I die, someone holds me like this. Someone who makes me feel like I mattered." Vivian closed the journal and made her decision. She called her lawyer at 6 a.m. before he'd even left for the office. "I need you to draft my resignation, effective immediately. And I want to purchase the cemetery property outright before the sale to Westridge closes." "Vivian, that's not advisable. If you resign, you lose control of the company, and purchasing the property will require at least $20 million, maybe more. The sellers will know you're desperate." "I don't care. Draw up the papers. Think about this. Sleep on it. Don't make impulsive decisions." "I've been thinking about it all night. This is the most clear-headed decision I've made in years." She hung up and began the process of dismantling her own empire. By noon, she'd called an emergency shareholder meeting. By 2 p.m, she was standing in front of her board again, but this time she wasn't asking for anything. "I'm resigning as CEO of Ashmore Capital, effective immediately," she announced. "I'm also selling my controlling shares back to the company at current market value." The room erupted. Richard stood up, his face red. "You can't be serious. Do you understand what this will do to the stock price, to investor confidence?" "I understand perfectly, but I'm not asking for your permission." "This is about that cemetery," another board member said. "You're destroying a billion-dollar company over a piece of land that's going to be developed anyway." "No," Vivian said calmly. "I'm leaving because I finally understand what matters. And it's not this." She walked out of the meeting, out of the building she'd built, and didn't look back. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal negotiations. The cemetery owners were thrilled to sell directly to her. She offered them $25 million, well above Westridge's offer. Westridge Development threatened to sue, but Vivian's lawyers found an exit clause in the contract that let them walk away if the property was no longer available. Her company's stock dropped 15% when news of her resignation broke. Financial news outlets ran stories about her breakdown and erratic behavior. Former colleagues called her crazy. Shareholders threatened lawsuits. Vivian ignored all of it. She had one priority now, saving that cemetery. But through it all, Graham wouldn't answer her calls, wouldn't respond to her messages. When she drove to the cemetery, he wasn't there. When she went to the guest house, he'd cleared out his belongings. He was gone. Paulette found her sitting in the memorial garden 3 days after her resignation, staring at the empty guest house. "He left?" Paulette asked gently. "He left. I don't blame him. The media is destroying you. They're saying you Had a mental breakdown, that you walked away from billions because you couldn't handle the pressure. Let them say what they want. Paulette sat beside her on the bench Graham had built. Was it worth it, giving up everything? Vivienne thought about Anna's drawing, about Iris's journal, about the way Graham's face had looked when he realized he could trust her. And then the way it looked when he thought she'd betrayed him. Yes, she said, even if he never forgives me, it was worth it. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question. Vivienne started to deny it, then stopped. Was she in love with Graham? Or was she in love with the person she became around him? More honest, more present, more human? I don't know, she said finally. Maybe, but that's not why I did this. Then why? Because Iris died feeling like her life didn't matter, like she never lived up to her potential because she didn't build empires or make millions. But she mattered more than I ever did. She sat with a dying child and made her feel less alone. That's worth more than every dollar I ever made. Paulette was quiet for a moment. Then, so what now? Now I find him, and I tell him the cemetery is safe, that Anna and Iris can rest in peace. And if he still won't forgive you, then at least I did the right thing. Finally, Vivienne spent the next week searching for Graham. She checked homeless shelters, asked at the cemetery, drove through neighborhoods looking for him. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished. Then, one morning, she received a call from a hospital in Riverside. Miss Ashmore, we have a patient here, Graham Tierney. He listed you as his emergency contact. Vivienne's heart stopped. Is he okay? What happened? He collapsed at the cemetery. We're running tests now, but you should come. She made the drive in record time, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. When she reached his room, a doctor was waiting outside. Miss Ashmore, I'm Dr. Patterson. Mr. Tierney asked me to speak with you. What's wrong with him? The doctor's expression was grave. He has the same condition his daughter had, leukemia. It's advanced. He's known for several months but refused treatment. Vivienne felt the floor tilt beneath her. How advanced? Without treatment, he has maybe 6 months. With aggressive treatment, we could extend that significantly, possibly put him into remission. But the treatments are expensive and difficult. I don't care about the cost. Whatever he needs. That's not the issue. He's refusing treatment, says he's made his peace with it. Can I see him? The doctor nodded and opened the door. Graham lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller somehow, more fragile. When he saw Vivienne, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or resignation. You came, he said quietly. Of course I came. She moved to his bedside, fighting back tears. Graham, the doctor told me. I know what he told you. It's the same thing that took Anna. Then you have to fight it. You have to try. Why? His voice was calm, almost peaceful. Anna's gone. Iris is gone. What do I have to fight for? You have your life. You have people who care about you. You mean you? Graham looked at her steadily. The woman whose company tried to dig up my daughter's grave? I resigned. I bought the cemetery. It's protected now. No one can develop it. Anna and Iris are safe. Graham's eyes widened. You what? I walked away from everything, the company, the money, all of it. The cemetery is mine now, and I'm turning it into a protected memorial park. No condos, no development, just peace. He stared at her, processing this. You gave up your company for a cemetery? For what matters? For Iris and Anna, for you. Vivienne took his hand, feeling how cold it was. I know you're angry with me. I know you think I betrayed you, but please don't give up. Please fight this. I'm tired, Vivienne. I've been fighting for 3 years, fighting to save Anna, fighting to survive after she died, fighting to find a reason to keep going. I don't have any fight left. Then let me fight for you. Let me do for you what you did for Anna. Give everything I have to keep you alive. Graham's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why do you care so much? Because you remind me what it means to love something more than success. Because you showed me that showing up is more important than winning. Because she stopped, realizing the truth as she said it. Because losing you would break me in a way I don't think I could survive. They sat in silence, her hand holding his, both of them damaged and scared and clinging to each other because there was no one else who understood. Finally, Graham spoke. "If I do this, if I try the treatments, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If it doesn't work, if I end up like Anna at the end, you let me go. You don't keep fighting when there's nothing left to fight for. You let me join her with dignity." Vivian wanted to refuse, to insist she'd never stop fighting, but she understood what he was asking. The same thing he'd given Anna, the freedom to go peacefully when the time came. "I promise," she whispered. "Okay then." Graham squeezed her hand weakly. "I'll try." The treatments began immediately. Chemotherapy, radiation, an aggressive protocol that the doctors said gave Graham a fighting chance if his body could withstand it. Vivian moved into the hospital room with him, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, refusing to leave even when the nurses gently suggested she go home and rest. "I promised I'd fight for you," she told Graham when he protested. "That means being here." The first week was brutal. Graham's body rebelled against the poison they were pumping into it to kill the cancer. He couldn't keep food down, couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything but suffer through wave after wave of nausea and pain. Vivienne held the basin when he was sick, wiped his face with cool cloths, read to him from the secret garden when he was too weak to talk. "This is what it was like for Anna," he whispered one night, his voice hoarse. "Now I understand. God, she was so brave. You're brave too. I'm terrified. That's what makes it brave." Between treatments, when Graham was strong enough, Vivienne told him about the cemetery. How she'd not only purchased it, but was working with the city to have it designated as a historical landmark, ensuring it could never be developed. How she was funding its restoration and maintenance in perpetuity through a trust she'd established. "There's something else," she said one afternoon, pulling out her tablet to show him architectural plans. "I want to build something there. A reflection garden, open to anyone who needs a quiet place to grieve, with benches and walking paths and a memorial wall where people can leave messages for their loved ones." Graham studied the plans, his eyes brightening despite his exhaustion. "This is beautiful, but it must cost. I don't care what it costs. I have more money than I'll ever need, even after leaving the company. This is what it should be used for, creating spaces where people can heal. What about the memorial garden at your house? The one I started? I want you to finish it. When you're well enough, it'll be the prototype for the cemetery garden. If I'm well enough," Graham corrected quietly. "When?" Vivian insisted. But doubt crept in as the days turned to weeks. Graham grew weaker, thinner, his hair falling out in clumps just like Anna's had. The doctors remained cautiously optimistic. The cancer was responding to treatment, but the toll on Graham's body was severe. One night, after a particularly difficult treatment, Graham reached for Vivian's hand. "I need to tell you something. In case—" "Don't," Vivian interrupted. "Don't talk like that. Listen to me, please." He waited until she met his eyes. "When Anna was dying, I told myself I'd never let anyone close again. That I couldn't survive losing someone else I loved. But then I met you, and you wouldn't let me disappear. You kept showing up, kept caring, even when I tried to push you away. Graham, I'm not finished." His grip on her hand tightened. "I was angry when I found out about your company and the cemetery. Angry because I'd started to trust you, started to feel like maybe I could let someone in again. And then it felt like you'd betrayed that. I'm so sorry, I know. And I understand now that you didn't know, that you did everything you could to fix it. But what I really need you to understand is that you didn't just save the cemetery. You saved me. You gave me a reason to fight when I'd given up. You reminded me that life can still have meaning even after losing everything." Tears streamed down Vivian's face. "You did the same for me. I was just going through the motions, building empires to avoid feeling anything real. You showed me what actually matters." Graham pulled her closer, and she carefully climbed onto the narrow hospital bed beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. They lay together in the dim room, listening to the beep of monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital. "Promise me something else," Graham said softly. "What?" "If I don't make it, finish the garden anyway. Make it beautiful. Make it a place where people like us, people who've lost everything, can find peace. You're going to make it. You're going to finish it yourself. Promise me anyway." Vivian lifted her head to look at him, seeing the fear beneath his calm exterior. "I promise. But you're going to be there with me. We're going to build it together." Graham touched her face gently, his hand trembling. "I hope you're right." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two broken people trying to become whole. And outside the hospital window, the first snow of November began to fall, covering the world in quiet white, making everything look clean and new and possible. In the morning, the doctors would come with test results. They would either show improvement or decline, hope or the beginning of the end. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. They had survived another day. And sometimes Vivian was learning that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. The test results came back promising. The cancer was responding to treatment, not gone, but retreating. The doctors used words like encouraging and cautiously optimistic. Graham would need months more of treatment, but there was hope now. Real, tangible hope. Vivian cried when she heard the news, great heaving sobs of relief that she couldn't control. Graham held her hand and cried too, both of them releasing weeks of fear and tension. "You're going to make it," Vivian whispered. "You're going to live." "Maybe," Graham said, but he was smiling. "Maybe I am." They kept him in the hospital for another 2 weeks, monitoring his progress, adjusting medications. Vivian barely left his side, conducting what remained of her business affairs from his room via laptop and phone. She'd established a foundation, the Anna and Iris Memorial Foundation, dedicated to helping families facing medical crises. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now doing for others what she wished someone had done for Graham. Paulette visited regularly, bringing updates and documents that needed signing. She'd taken to Graham immediately, charmed by his quiet dignity and dry humor that emerged as he grew stronger. "You know," Paulette said one afternoon while Graham was sleeping, "I've worked for you for 8 years. This is the happiest I've ever seen you." "I gave up everything," Vivian said. "My company, my reputation, billions of dollars, and gained everything that actually matters." Paulette smiled. Iris would be proud. When Graham was finally released from the hospital 3 months after his collapse, Vivian drove him home, not to the guest house, but to the main house. She'd prepared the downstairs bedroom for him, knowing stairs would be difficult while he recovered. "You don't have to do this," Graham protested weakly. "I know, I want to." He was too tired to argue. The treatments had left him weak, gaunt, a shadow of the man she'd first met at the cemetery. But his eyes were clearer now, looking toward a future instead of dwelling in the past. Over the following weeks, as winter gave way to early spring, Graham slowly regained his strength. He started with short walks around the property, then longer ones. He'd stand at the edge of the memorial garden they'd started together, studying it with a carpenter's eye, making mental notes of what still needed to be done. One morning in late March, Vivian found him in the garage, sorting through his old tools. "Oh, what are you doing?" she asked. "I think I'm ready," he said simply. "Ready to finish Anna's chest. Ready to work again." He set up a small workshop in the garage, and Vivian watched as his hands, steady now, no longer trembling, began to shape wood again. The motions came back to him naturally, muscle memory from decades of practice. He worked slowly at first, carefully, but with growing confidence. The chest took shape over several weeks. Graham added new details. A carved bird in flight on the lid, flowers around the edges, Anna's name in elegant script. It was a masterpiece, a father's love rendered in cherry wood and patience. When it was finished, he brought Vivian to see it. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "Anna would have loved it. I made it for her 9th birthday. She never got to turn 9. Graham's voice was steady now, sad but no longer breaking. "But I finished it anyway. Because she deserves to be remembered as more than just a sick child. She was creative and funny and brave. She was everything." "She was," Vivian agreed. "And this proves it." They took the chest to the cemetery together, to Anna's grave. Graham placed it carefully on the ground beside the headstone. I know you can't use it now, baby girl, he said softly, but I wanted you to know I finished it. I wanted you to know I kept my promise. They sat together under the oak tree, and Vivian realized how much had changed since that first foggy October morning. The cemetery was officially protected now, designated as a historical landmark. Construction had begun on the reflection garden, Graham's designs brought to life by skilled workers. The memorial wall was already up, covered with messages from grieving families who'd found comfort in this place. I never thought I'd want to live after Anna died, Graham said, breaking the comfortable silence. Couldn't imagine a future without her in it. And now? Now I see that honoring her doesn't mean joining her. It means living the life she didn't get to live. Being brave like she was, finding joy even in the hard moments. He looked at Vivian. She would have liked you. She would have said you have kind eyes. I wish I could have met her. In a way you did. Through Iris, through me, through this garden we're building together. They visited Iris's grave next, placing fresh flowers on the headstone. Vivienne touched the carved letters of her sister's name, no longer drowning in grief, but carrying it with grace. I understand now, she said, what you were doing with Anna, why it mattered so much to you. You weren't just reading to a sick child. You were teaching her that even in the darkest times, beauty still exists. That stories matter, that she mattered. That's exactly what Iris did for Anna, Graham said. And what you did for me. They walked back to the memorial garden together, to the bench where Graham had first told Vivian about Anna and Iris's friendship. The garden was in full bloom now. Lavender and roses, daisies and sunflowers, all the flowers Anna had loved. The wooden arbor Graham had built stood at the entrance, weathered now but strong, marking the threshold between the ordinary world and this sacred space. Look, Graham said, pointing. A butterfly had landed on one of the roses, its wings orange and black in the spring sunlight. They watched it together, remembering a little girl's drawing of a garden where butterflies flew and people smiled and everything was beautiful. She's here, Vivian whispered. She's always been here, Graham replied. We just needed to build something beautiful enough to honor her. 6 months later, on a warm October morning, the cemetery held its official dedication ceremony as the Anna and Iris Memorial Park. Families gathered. Some who'd been visiting loved ones there for decades. Others who'd only recently discovered this peaceful place. News crews captured the moment, but the coverage was respectful now, no longer focused on Vivian's breakdown, but on her transformation and generosity. Graham stood beside Vivian at the front of the small crowd. Healthy now, his hair grown back silver at the temples. The doctors had declared him in remission 2 weeks earlier. No guarantees, they'd cautioned, but every test showed the cancer retreating. He'd gained back the weight he'd lost, and his hands were steady and strong again. Together, they unveiled a bronze plaque mounted on a stone pedestal at the garden's entrance. The Anna and Iris Memorial Garden, in loving memory of Anna Marie Tierney and Iris Catherine Ashmore. 2 souls who understood that even in our darkest moments, beauty can still grow, kindness still matters, and love transcends the boundaries between life and death. Where you tend a rose, a thistle cannot grow. Vivian spoke first, her voice clear and calm. My sister Iris taught elementary school for 20 years. She touched hundreds of lives, but she never believed she'd made a real difference. She measured herself against impossible standards and always came up short in her own eyes. She paused, looking at Graham. But then she met a little girl named Anna, and together they created something sacred. They proved that the quietest acts of kindness are often the most powerful. Graham stepped forward when she finished, and Vivian saw his hands tremble slightly as he gripped the microphone. But his voice was steady. Anna was 8 years old when she died. She loved books and drawing and butterflies. She believed people were basically good, even when the world gave her every reason not to. Her best friend in her final months was a woman she met right here under that oak tree. Miss Iris, she called her. Miss Iris, who read to her and listened to her and made her feel like her life mattered, even though it was going to be too short. He had to stop, overcome for a moment. Vivian moved closer, her hand on his back, offering silent support. This garden exists because two strangers met in this cemetery and realized we weren't as alone as we thought. Because Vivienne, his voice cracked slightly on her name. Because Vivienne showed me that grief doesn't have to be the end of the story. That we can honor the people we've lost by living with the same courage and kindness they showed us. When the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Vivienne and Graham walked through the garden together. The reflection paths wound between flowering beds, past benches carved with Graham's own hands, to the memorial wall where hundreds of messages had been left. Vivienne stopped to read a few. To my husband John, I miss you every day. But sitting here I feel close to you again. For my baby girl, who I only got to hold once. You were loved. You mattered. Mom, thank you for everything. I'm trying to live the way you taught me. Each message was a testament to love that endured beyond death, to connections that couldn't be broken by something as mundane as mortality. They walked to their spot, the bench under the oak tree between Anna's and Iris's graves. Graham had carved a new sign that hung from the tree branch above, the Anna and Iris Memorial Garden. He'd installed it that morning, a surprise for Vivienne. It's perfect, she said, tears in her eyes. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching leaves drift down in the autumn breeze. Paulette had stayed for the ceremony, but left them alone now, understanding they needed this moment. I have something for you, Graham said, pulling a small wooden box from his jacket pocket. It was intricately carved, about the size of his palm, with flowers and vines decorating the lid. Vivienne opened it carefully. Inside was a ring, not expensive or flashy, just a simple silver band with a small inscription inside, "Where you tend a rose." It's not an engagement ring, Graham said quickly. I know this is still new and we're still figuring things out. But I wanted you to have something. A promise that I'm here, that I'm fighting to stay here, that whatever future we have, I want to build it with you. Vivienne slipped the ring onto her finger, feeling its comfortable weight. I love it. She stopped, afraid to finish the sentence. You can say it, Graham said softly. I already know. I feel the same way. I love you, Vivienne whispered. Is that crazy? We've only known each other less than a year. If it's crazy, then we're both crazy. Graham pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. Anna used to say that the best things happen fast, like magic. That love doesn't need time to be real. She was a wise soul. She was. They sat together as afternoon turned to evening, as the sun set behind the oak tree and cast long shadows across the graves. Other visitors came and went, an elderly woman placing flowers, a young father with a toddler visiting what must have been the child's mother, a teenage girl sitting alone and crying beside a fresh grave. We did something good here, Vivienne said. We did, Graham agreed. Iris and Anna would be proud. As darkness fell, they walked back to the car, hand in hand. The cemetery gates would close soon, locking in the peace until morning. But they'd return tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Not because they were trapped in grief anymore, but because this place had become something more than a repository for the dead. It had become a testament to love, to healing, to the truth that sometimes the most broken people can help each other become whole again. And in the garden they'd built together, roses bloomed where thistles could not grow.